If you come to America to rob Americans, we're throwing you in jail and we're sending you back to the place from where you came. We're throwing you right in jail.
City licensing is supposed to regulate businesses, protect the public, and enforce accountability. But federal investigators now say that in one major U.S. city, the licensing system itself became the foundation of a large-scale criminal network. And what makes this case different is not just the scale, it's how deeply the system was embedded before anyone realized what was happening. This morning, a coordinated federal operation exposed more than 140 licensed businesses linked to trafficking, prostitution, and nearly $1 billion in suspected money laundering. At the center of the investigation was a Somali mayor with direct authority over licensing approvals and regulatory oversight. Early irregularities had been flagged years earlier, but they never triggered action. And by the time those warning signs were finally taken seriously, it was already too late to stop the system from growing. By the time agents moved at 3:58 a.m., the network wasn't forming anymore. It was already fully operational. What they uncovered was not businesses operating outside the law. It was illegality operating through legal approval itself. And once that line disappears, enforcement becomes something very different. Stay with me. I'll show you exactly how this system was built. Business licensing systems are designed to act as a gatekeeper. Every permit issued represents a layer of trust. Every inspection is meant to ensure compliance. Every approval signals that a business has met the required standards to operate safely within the law. But in this case, investigators say something far more dangerous happened. The safeguards didn't collapse. They were repurposed. Instead of stopping illegal activity, the system began protecting it. Authorities believe a coordinated network used legal business licensing to create a controlled infrastructure for trafficking and financial crime. More than 140 businesses operated under valid permits while facilitating prostitution networks, victim movement, and large-scale laundering operations. And because everything appeared legitimate on paper, it was nearly impossible to detect in real time. The system moved more than $980 million over 6 years, with over 200 victims identified within its structure. At 3:58 a.m., the city was quiet. Streetlights reflected off empty roads. Storefronts were dark. But across multiple districts, something else was already happening. More than 260 agents from the FBI, ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, and financial crime units had surrounded targeted businesses, administrative offices, and residential locations linked to the network. This was not a routine inspection. This was a coordinated strike. And once it started, there was no going back. At exactly 3:58 a.m., the operation began. The investigation started with a single irregularity that seemed minor at first. A licensed spa located in a commercial district reported revenue levels significantly higher than comparable businesses in the same category. The discrepancy was flagged during a routine financial audit. On paper, everything appeared compliant. The business held a valid license, had passed inspections, and maintained proper documentation. But when investigators looked closer, inconsistencies began to surface. Employee records did not match payroll activity, service descriptions did not align with transaction volume, surveillance indicated unusually high turnover of clients within short time intervals. At first, the case was treated as a potential licensing violation. But when financial auditors expanded their review, they discovered similar patterns across other businesses. Within weeks, 11 additional establishments showed nearly identical financial anomalies. Each had been licensed under the same approval chain. Each reported inflated revenue inconsistent with their stated services. Each showed signs of controlled access and restricted internal movement. By month 3, the number of suspicious businesses grew to 38. By month 6, investigators identified 79. And by month 9, more than 140 licensed establishments were linked through shared financial patterns, operational similarities, and approval records. This was no longer an isolated issue. It was a system. As investigators traced the licensing process, they found a critical point of control. A significant portion of the businesses had been approved through expedited review pathways tied to the mayor's administrative authority. Under normal procedures, business licenses required multiple layers of verification. Zoning compliance, safety inspections, and financial disclosures all had to be reviewed before approval. But in these cases, approvals were consistently processed faster than standard timelines, often bypassing secondary review checkpoints. The Somali mayor at the center of the investigation had authority over departments responsible for final licensing approval. Internal records revealed repeated override authorizations connected to the same approval structure. At first glance, these overrides appeared to be administrative decisions aimed at streamlining operations. But when analyzed collectively, they revealed a pattern. Businesses connected to the network were granted licenses despite incomplete documentation and limited inspection records. Once approved, these businesses operated under full legal protection. They were not hidden. They were visible, documented, and recognized as legitimate establishments. That legitimacy became the foundation of the system. Comment expose if you believe systems like this survive because they are built into legal processes. At 5:26 a.m., agents entered one of the targeted establishments. From the outside, it appeared to be a standard wellness facility. Inside, the structure told a different story. Restricted areas were hidden behind reinforced doors. Surveillance systems monitored movement throughout the building. Internal layouts were designed to control access and visibility. Agents recovered multiple individuals from the location, some of whom had limited access to personal identification documents. Interviews revealed patterns of movement between different establishments across the city. Victims were rotated between locations on scheduled intervals, reducing the likelihood of detection at any single site. Additional raids uncovered similar setups across multiple businesses. In several locations, investigators found centralized scheduling systems coordinating operations between different properties. Financial records showed revenue from multiple establishments being consolidated into shared accounts before being redistributed through layered transactions. In one facility, agents discovered transport logs detailing movement of individuals between locations using coded identifiers rather than names. This was not a collection of independent operations. It was coordinated distribution. That was the moment the investigation shifted. This was not illegal activity hidden behind businesses. This was a system operating through them. Financial analysis revealed the true scale of the network. Over $980 million had moved through accounts tied to the system over a 6-year period. Funds were structured through shell companies, consulting agreements, and service contracts designed to obscure their origin. Transactions were broken into smaller amounts to avoid triggering regulatory alerts. Revenue generated at individual locations was funneled into centralized accounts before being redistributed across multiple entities. Some funds were routed through legitimate business operations, blending illicit activity with legal income streams. Others were transferred internationally through layered financial channels. Communication records exposed the operational language behind the network. Messages referenced units, rotation schedules, and transfer windows, indicating a system built around movement rather than individual activity. Investigators identified a structured hierarchy. At the top were individuals controlling licensing, access, and financial routing. Below them were operators managing multiple business locations. At the lowest level were administrative staff responsible for maintaining documentation and compliance records. This was not disorganized crime. It was structured, coordinated, and scalable. At 3:58 a.m. the following morning, Federal Command initiated the full enforcement phase under the operation name Silent License. More than 260 agents executed simultaneous raids across the city. Businesses were shut down. Financial accounts were frozen. Administrative systems were seized. By the end of the operation, the numbers confirmed the scale. 143 businesses identified. 212 victims recovered or traced. $980 million in financial activity flagged. 54 individuals detained, including business operators, coordinators, and regulatory personnel. But even with these results, investigators were not convinced the system had been fully dismantled. Within 48 hours, attempts were detected to access licensing databases using credentials not linked to any arrested individual. That meant one thing: the system was still active in some form. The structure had been disrupted, but not eliminated. And that realization changed everything. Because what investigators uncovered was not just a network of illegal businesses. It was a model capable of replication. By nightfall, the businesses were closed. The licenses were revoked. The accounts were frozen. But the deeper impact of the case was not the arrests or the financial totals. It was the realization that the system itself had been used as a tool. This network did not rely solely on secrecy. It relied on legitimacy. It used legal approval, regulatory authority, and documented compliance as cover. It transformed processes designed to protect into mechanisms that concealed. And once that becomes possible, the question is no longer whether corruption exists. The question becomes how deeply it is embedded. Because if a system designed to regulate can be used to enable, then oversight alone is no longer protection. And if that is true, then one question remains. How many other systems are still functioning exactly as designed, but no longer serving the purpose they were built for?